Companies that mimic life, leaders of the emerging corporate renaissance by Joseph H. Bragdon. Introduction. We are at that very point in time when a 400-year-old age is dying and another is struggling to be born. A shifting of culture, science, society, and institutions enormously larger than the world has ever experienced. Ahead, the possibility of the regeneration of individuality, liberty, community, and ethics, such as the world has never known, and a harmony with nature, one another, and with the divine intelligence, such as the world has never dreamed. D. Ward Hawk, founder of Visa. Industrial capitalism is broken. The signs which transcend national ideologies are everywhere. Climate change, ecological overshoot, financial exhaustion, fraying social safety nets, corporate fraud, government deceit, civic unrest, terrorism, war. Yet, with the world approaching unimaginable economic and social chaos, a transformative new system is emerging. This book tells how that transformation is taking root in the corporate world, the last place many of us would look for solutions. This is not to say the years ahead will be easy. They will be difficult. Many, if not most, economic, ecological, and social problems will become worse before they get better. But there is hope. And D. Hawk, the visionary founder of Visa, frames it accurately. In these pages, I intend to show why Hawk's uplifting vision of the future is credible. My thesis is embedded in the stories of 7 exceptional companies. Their shared secret is a new mental model of the firm that is the virtual opposite of industrial capitalism. It works like this. Instead of modeling themselves on the assumed efficiency of machines, a thought process that emerged during the industrial age, these firms model themselves on living systems. Understanding that everything of value ultimately arises from life, they place a higher value on living assets, people, and nature than they do on non living capital assets. The energy they invest in stewarding those assets, a practice we call living asset stewardship or LAS, is transformative. Instead of exploiting people and nature, which creates systemic resistance, they nurture both, which creates flow and harmony. When you step back and think of this approach, it makes sense. Companies are inherently living systems. communities of people with shared goals, living and working at the intersection of biosphere and society. And here is the rub. Within this web of life, there resides enormous intelligence, much of which remains untapped. Life mimicking companies tap into this intelligence in two key ways. Number one, through mimicking natural processes in the ways they produce goods and services via industrial ecology. Number two, by awakening the spiritual intelligence of employees, which resides in the interconnected neurology of their hearts, brains, and guts. We will return to these themes many times in our narrative. For now, suffice it to say that spiritual intelligence is our highest intelligence because it guides our reasoning ability, IQ, and emotional intelligence by investing them with meaning and purpose. Through the modern sciences of cognition, we are still learning how these processes work. Progressive companies, particularly those featured in this book, are on the leading edge of that discovery process because they recognize adaptive learning as essential to both competitive excellence and survival. This brings us to the urgent raison d'etre of companies that mimic life. Given the ecological and social disintegration of the world economy under the system of industrial capitalism, we must learn to live and work more harmoniously with the rest of life and learn fast. Systems thinker Peter Sang calls this awakening of human consciousness a necessary revolution. And it is. Companies at the forefront of this revolution, by connecting to the immense resources of the human spirit, will survive and thrive through the challenges we now face. Those in denial will certainly fail. The crux of the matter is this: the lenses through which we view the world, our mental models of reality, ultimately determine our outcomes. Companies that mimic life see the world as it actually is: a self regulating, complex, adaptive system whose defining property is life, not a mechanical system that works by a fixed set of laws. The incontrovertible fact is no other planet in our solar system has evolved such a diversity of ecosystems. From the bacteria that regulate our climate to the intricate web of plants and animals that comprise nature, to our very human selves, whose advanced brains have conceived sophisticated markets and institutions of learning, the earth is unique. As companies that mimic life have learned, the path to success in such a world is to integrate with and learn from life, rather than separating ourselves from it, as omnipotent conquerors and controllers. Call it unconventional, if you will, but it works. Companies that mimic machines don't get this. By ignoring the reality that they are part of life and that they utterly depend on life for the value they create, they short circuit their capacities to learn and adapt. And consign themselves to a lose lose cycle of compounding errors. The Global Lamp Index. In the early 1990s, respected authors began to advance the idea of economies as ecosystems and companies as living entities within those systems. Seminal books of this movement included Michael Rothschild's Bionomics, Economy as Ecosystem, and Peter Sank's Fifth Discipline, both published in 1990. This conceptual paradigm evolved at MIT, where both men did their doctoral studies. Through the pioneering work of J. Forrester, the father of systems thinking. The underlying premises of these books awakened me to new insights. While my earlier training in economics and securities analysis had prepared me to see the world in an empirical, linear way, with emphasis on discrete numbers such as GDP, revenues, and corporate earnings, this new mode of thinking enabled me to see systems as a whole and the importance of diverse nonlinear feedbacks in determining outcomes. In hindsight, I was mentally ready for this shift in thinking. Since the early 1970s, I had observed that companies with progressive cultures were outperforming those with more traditional bottom line first cultures. Yet, I didn't have a cohesive theory to explain why. To explore this new ground, I helped to organize and co chaired the first national symposium on corporate responsibility in investments at the Harvard Business School in April 1972. Although a step forward, the ideas that emerged from this meeting left too many questions unanswered. As I look back on it, the insights we sought were not to be found in reductionist number crunching or end of the pipe solutions, but in looking upstream to question the fundamental premises of business as usual. To shorten a long story, as I became immersed in systems thinking, a light went on. If companies were living ecosystems, their primary assets had to be living as well. Although implicit in the behavior of many progressive companies, nobody at the time had made a clear distinction between living assets and non living capital assets. Once made, however, LAS seemed a high leverage thing to do. To test that idea, in 1995, I created a learning lab of companies that were then stewardship leaders, called the Global Living Asset Management Performance Index. This lab has since become a continuing source of insight, a means of tracking the evolution of LAS best practices in a group of committed stewardship leaders. Starting with a small cohort of companies I knew well from prior years of research, I gradually expanded the index to 60 companies, double the size of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, large enough to be statistically significant, but small enough that I could keep up with current developments in each. By selecting best of breed LAS companies within a broadly representative group of industries sectors, I was able to deepen my insight into the synergies of life mimicking cultures while achieving the high degree of comparability that I sought. To maintain the lab's integrity, its composition has been remarkably stable. Of the original 60 companies, there have been only 6 name changes since 1995. The notional start date of the index, 4 due to mergers and acquisitions, and 2 due to original selection errors on my part. By minimizing the bias of hindsight, this stability enables us to make credible comparisons of investment returns on the LAMP 60 relative to benchmark indices. Table 0.1 indicates the operating advantages of LAS relative to conventional management practices. Looking at multi-year periods between 1996 and 2015, we see the LAMP 60 outperformed by wide margins 3 commonly used global equity benchmarks: the Morgan Stanley Capital International World Index, MSCI, the Financial Times Stock Exchange World Index, the FTSE, and the Standard & Poor's S&P Global 100 Index. Good as global LAMP index returns have been, however, the Learning Lab conveys a larger message that the deeper companies go into LAS, the more profitable they become. To test that proposition, I separated from the original LAMP 60 7 companies that model LAS best practices. Called the focus group, these cover a range of industries from steel and capital goods to consumer durables, apparel, non-durables, household products, pharmaceuticals, and banking. Although not perfectly comparable to the LAMP 60 due to its overweight in manufacturing and zero weight in technology, the focus group nevertheless makes a powerful case for pursuing best practices. In fact, one of the key lessons derived from the focus group is how the advantages of LAS best practices are magnified in mature industries where older theories of management predominate. By enabling progressive companies to outthink competitors, they generate factor efficiencies and market share gains that yield extraordinary shareholder returns. Consider the case of Nucor. Operating in the deeply cyclical, layoff-prone steel industry, it has been profitable in all but one of the past 50 years, from 1965 to 2015, with no layoffs due to lack of work. During this time, which included 7 US recessions, declining US steel output, and widespread bankruptcies among US steelmakers, Nucor's shares appreciated in value more than 400-fold. Fascinating as Nucor's story is, and we shall return to it shortly, we should not assume that our LAS leaders have a locked-in competitive advantage. In fact, their advantages are likely to diminish over time as other companies copy and improve on their practices. This is natural. Good ideas spread and eventually drive out bad or less effective ones. In LAS, as with product and process innovation, the only way to stay ahead is to continuously push LAS best practices, to stay on the leading edge of the learning curve. The focus group is remarkable because its 7 companies have done this better than most of the LAMP 60 cohort. The advantages of best practices are especially evident during and immediately following economic recessions, where speed of learning and adaptation convey strategic advantages. During the 5-year period that began with the recession of 2000 to 2002, the focus group returned 109%, more than double the LAMP 60, which gained 49%, while global benchmarks lost 13% on average. Again, looking at the 5-year period, starting with the market crash of 2008 and the ensuing recession, the focus group returned 52%, more than triple the LAMP 60, which gained 14%, while global benchmarks lost 4% on average. The operating leverage of LAS. The operating leverage of LAS, as just suggested, resides in speed of learning and adaptation. These skills, in turn, rely on a heightened corporate consciousness. Because consciousness is a unique property of life, the more lifelike companies become, the more conscious they become. So, what are these critical lifelike qualities? There are six, and they are present in all life from single cell organisms to large ecosystems. These include number one, decentralized, self organizing, networked structures whose component parts serve the health of the whole, such as the human nerve system and the cognitive architecture of our brains. Number two, regenerative life strategies that increase opportunities for survival, reproduction, and improving cultural DNA. Number three, frugal instincts that seek to optimize use of resources. Number four, openness to feedback that enables adaptive learning. Number five, symbiotic behaviors that link individual well being to the health of the larger systems in which they exist biosphere, society. And finally, number six, consciousness of capabilities, interdependencies, and limits. The sixth is an emergent quality that grows as the other five attributes become more developed. And it's important because it guides the capacities of companies to make intelligent decisions. To show how these life mimicking attributes work in practice, our first seven chapters describe how the seven focus group companies use them to leverage their cognitive skills, which is the source of their extraordinary ecological, social, and financial results. While many of these qualities have been explored in academic and business studies, this book is the first to present them as a coherent whole. In chapter one, we begin with a holistic overview of LAS through the experience of Unilever, a producer of household goods, rated as one of the world's most ethical and sustainable companies. Our story highlights the company's sustainable living plan, which aims to radically lower its global ecological footprint while raising living standards in developing countries, where it sources many of its raw materials. As one of the world's most sought after employers, Unilever attracts an extraordinary depth of young talent. The energy so generated accelerates profit growth. Between the year 2000 and 2015, the value of its shares appreciated more than 200%, roughly 5 times more than global benchmark indices and 1.3 times more than its primary competitor, Procter and Gamble. In chapter 2, we discover how Nucor reinvented the global steel industry by giving frontline employees the creative freedom to self-organize and network. By simply harvesting the knowledge of men and women doing the work, it quickly became the innovation, profit and green leader of its industry, with no research and development department, R&D. Between 2000 and 2015, Nucor's shares grew by more than 450%, 9 times more than global benchmark indices, while the once giant US still lost shareholder value. In Chapter 3, we learn how the United Technologies Corporation, a manufacturer of capital goods, developed a capacity for self-regeneration by serving the personal and professional growth of employees. Its employee scholarship program, initiated in 1996, enables all employees, regardless of rank, to pursue the degree of their choice up to PhD at company expense. Degrees in art and philosophy are as valid as those in math and business. Instead of being a drain on corporate finances, this investment in building network capacity has helped United Technologies become a global leader in green engineering. Between 2000 and 2015, its stock grew by more than 250%, 5 times more than global benchmark indices, in a period when the shares of engineering giant General Electric lost value. In Chapter 4, we see how Novo Nordisk became the profit leader of the global pharmaceutical industry by inspiring employees to think in a resource-conserving, holistic context. Because of its commitment to responsible frugality, Novo has remained virtually debt-free, giving it the liberty to deepen its explorations into industrial ecology and to broaden its learning culture. Between 2000 and 2015, Novo's share price appreciated more than 20-fold, while those of Merck, Pfizer, and Lilly, Novo's main competitor, all lost value. In Chapter 5, we learn how Henkel preserves a culture of openness through free and transparent information sharing toward achieving its goal of Factor 3 efficiencies, defined as producing 3 times as much from a given set of resources. To accentuate open, honest communication, top executives serve as personally liable partners. Between 2000 and 2015, Henkel's shares appreciated 450%, approximately 9 times more than global benchmark indices.